They say a mother's intuition never lies, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what I found under my daughter-in-law's bed that October afternoon. The blood on my son's wedding suit was just the beginning. What lay beneath would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family. My name is Margaret Fisher. I'm 63 years old, and I've lived in Albany, New York, my entire life. I raised my son Benjamin in the same Victorian house where I grew up, working double shifts as a nurse for 30 years to give him every opportunity. Benjamin was my pride and joy, a successful architect who designed some of Albany's most beautiful buildings. When he married Natalie 2 months ago, I thought my prayers had been answered. She seemed perfect, charming, educated, from a good family. I'd spent $15,000 of my retirement savings to help pay for their wedding, wanting everything to be perfect for my only child. The wedding was magnificent. Benjamin looked so handsome in his custom Italian suit, a gift from me that cost $2,800. Natalie was radiant in her designer gown. As I watched them exchange vows, tears streaming down my face, I felt complete. Finally, my son had found happiness. They left for their honeymoon in the Maldives the next day. Benjamin called me twice from the resort, his voice filled with joy. "Mom, I've never been happier," he'd said. Those words echoed in my mind during the 2 weeks of silence that followed their return. At first, I wasn't worried. Newlyweds need time to adjust, I told myself. But when Benjamin didn't return my calls for 5 days, then a week, then 2 weeks, a cold dread settled in my chest. This wasn't like him. Benjamin called me every Sunday without fail. Always. I drove to their townhouse in the historic district, a place Benjamin had renovated himself, worth at least $650,000. My hands trembled as I rang the doorbell. No answer. I knocked. Still nothing. Using the spare key Benjamin had given me for emergencies, I let myself in. "Natalie? Benjamin?" My voice echoed through the empty hallway. The house was immaculate, but eerily quiet. Benjamin's car was in the driveway, but Natalie's was gone. I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding. Their bedroom door was ajar. That's when I saw it. The closet door stood open, and there, hanging among Natalie's designer dresses, was Benjamin's wedding suit. But it wasn't the crisp, pristine garment I remembered from that beautiful September day. Dark crimson stains splattered across the jacket. Unmistakable, terrifying. Blood. My legs nearly gave out. I grabbed the doorframe, gasping. "Benjamin!" I screamed. "Benjamin, where are you?" Silence answered me. My hands shaking violently, I approached the bed. Something compelled me to look underneath. I dropped to my knees, lifted the bedskirt, and peered into the darkness beneath. What I saw made me scream until my throat was raw. I stumbled backward, my mind refusing to process the horror before my eyes. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. But it was. If you're watching this, please don't go anywhere. This story gets even more shocking than you can imagine. Hit that like button right now, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Your support means everything to me as I share the most terrifying experience of my life. Under that bed was a collection that made my blood run cold. Dozens of newspaper clippings about missing persons, all young men who resembled Benjamin, photographs, maps with locations marked in red, and a leather-bound journal with Natalie's handwriting covering every page. My hands trembled as I pulled out the journal, my nurse's training kicking in as I forced myself to breathe steadily despite the panic coursing through my veins. I opened to a random page and the words I read made my stomach lurch. Subject profile, Benjamin Fisher, age 36, net worth approximately $1.2 million including property assets, life insurance policy, $850,000 with spouse as sole beneficiary, no siblings. Mother, Margaret Fisher, 63, retired nurse, estimated savings $180,000. Perfect candidate. Perfect candidate? For what? I flipped through more pages, my horror mounting with each entry. Detailed notes about Benjamin's daily routine, his coffee preferences, his jogging route, bank account information, investment portfolios. Everything about my son's life cataloged like he was a specimen under glass. Then I found entries from before they'd even met. March 15th. Approached Target at Starbucks on Madison Avenue. Used accidental coffee spill technique. He apologized profusely and bought me a replacement drink. Confirmed he's naturally kind and guilt-prone. Excellent traits for manipulation. This was no love story. This was a calculated hunt. I kept reading, unable to stop, despite the nausea rising in my throat. Natalie had orchestrated their entire relationship, the chance meetings, the shared interests that seemed so serendipitous, even her supposed love of architecture, all lies designed to ensnare my son. April 30th, Benjamin proposed. Ring cost $18,000, more than expected. He's completely under my control now. Mother Margaret is eager to please and desperate to see her son married. She'll be easy to manipulate for additional funds. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I'd been played too. Every warm conversation we'd had, every time Natalie had called me Mom, every moment I'd felt grateful my son had found such a wonderful woman. All lies. But where was Benjamin now? I scrambled to my feet and searched the room frantically. His phone wasn't on the nightstand. His wallet wasn't on the dresser. I ran to his home office down the hall. His laptop was gone, his passport missing. In the kitchen, I found his coffee mug from what appeared to be 2 weeks ago, a dark ring of mold growing at the bottom. Mail piled up on the counter, unopened. The refrigerator hummed with food going bad. My son hadn't been here in weeks. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. As the line rang, I heard a sound that made my heart stop, a car pulling into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Natalie's silver Mercedes. She was home. I stood frozen in the kitchen, the phone pressed to my ear as a dispatcher answered. 911, what's your emergency? My son is missing, I whispered urgently. I found blood and evidence of... The front door opened. Natalie walked in, wearing expensive sunglasses and carrying shopping bags from high-end stores. When she saw me standing there, her perfectly made-up face registered no surprise. Instead, she smiled, a cold, predatory smile that made my skin crawl. Margaret, she said, her voice smooth as silk. What an unexpected visit. I see you've been snooping. She set down her bags, slowly, deliberately. The shopping spree must have cost thousands, money from Benjamin's accounts, no doubt. Where is my son? I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. The 911 dispatcher was still on the line, and I prayed they were tracing the call. Natalie removed her sunglasses, her eyes calculating. Benjamin? Oh, Margaret, you really should have minded your own business. Ma'am? Ma'am, are you still there? The dispatcher's voice came through my phone. Natalie's smile widened. You should hang up that phone, Margaret, unless you want to join your son. I'm at 247 Willow Creek Lane, I said loudly into the phone, never breaking eye contact with Natalie. My son Benjamin Fisher has been missing for 2 weeks. I found evidence of foul play. Please send the police immediately. Natalie's composed mask cracked for just a moment, a flash of anger crossing her features. Then, incredibly, she laughed. It was a sound devoid of warmth, mechanical and rehearsed. You think the police will help you? She moved toward the living room, and I instinctively backed away. You really don't understand what's happening here, do you, Margaret? The dispatcher says police are on their way, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. My years as an emergency room nurse had taught me to stay calm in crises, but this was my son, my Benjamin. Let them come. Natalie settled onto Benjamin's leather couch, the one he'd saved for months to buy, spending $3,400 of his hard-earned money. She crossed her legs casually, as if we were having tea. I'm his wife. This is my home. You're the one who broke in. I have a key. Benjamin gave it to me. Did he? Or did you steal it? Her eyebrow arched. That's what I'll tell the police. Honestly, Margaret, everyone knows you've been struggling with the empty nest syndrome. Your co-workers mentioned it at the wedding, how you've seemed unstable since Benjamin moved out. Calling him constantly, showing up unannounced. My mouth went dry. She'd planned for this too. Every contingency calculated. A mother's concern isn't instability, I said firmly. And that journal under your bed tells a very different story. What journal? Natalie's expression remained perfectly innocent. I have no idea what you're talking about. Are you feeling all right, Margaret? Should I call your doctor? She was going to gaslight me, paint me as a delusional old woman. Before I could respond, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Natalie's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She stood gracefully and walked to the window. Here's what's going to happen, she said, her back to me. The police will arrive. You'll tell your wild story about journals and blood and missing persons. I'll express concern for your mental state, I'll show them how you broke into my home, they'll escort you out, and that will be the end of it. The journal will be gone before they search the house. If they search the house, which they won't without a warrant, and they won't get a warrant based on the ravings of an emotionally unstable mother-in-law. 2 patrol cars pulled up outside. Car doors slammed. Heavy footsteps approached the front door. "Last chance, Margaret," Natalie said softly, turning to face me with mock sympathy in her eyes. "You could say this was all a misunderstanding, that you were worried about Benjamin but realize now he's just busy with work. You could apologize for breaking in and leave quietly. I won't press charges." "Never." The doorbell rang. Natalie sighed dramatically and opened the door. "Officers, thank God you're here. My mother-in-law broke into our home, and I think she's having some kind of episode." 2 police officers stood on the threshold, a tall male officer in his 40s and a younger female officer with sharp, observant eyes. The female officer's gaze swept the room, landing on me, clutching my phone. "Ma'am, are you Margaret Fisher?" she asked. "Yes, I'm the one who called 911. My son is missing, and this woman," I pointed at Natalie, "has been pretending to be his loving wife while planning something terrible." The male officer exchanged glances with his partner. "Mrs. Fisher, why don't you tell us exactly what's going on?" "She broke in," Natalie began. "I have a key that my son gave me," I interrupted. "When Benjamin didn't return my calls for 2 weeks, I came to check on him. I found his wedding suit covered in blood in the upstairs closet, and under the bed, there's a journal full of—" "There's no journal," Natalie said smoothly. "Officers, I'm genuinely concerned about Margaret. She's been struggling with anxiety since Benjamin and I got married." The female officer, whose name badge read Officer Maria Santos, held up her hand for silence. "Let's take this one step at a time. Mrs. Fisher, you have a key to this residence?" I pulled it from my pocket and held it up. "Benjamin gave it to me 3 years ago when he bought this house, for emergencies." Officer Santos nodded. "And Mrs. Natalie Fisher," my daughter-in-law supplied with a sweet smile. "I've been Benjamin's wife for 2 months now." "Mrs. Fisher? Natalie, when did you last see your husband?" "This morning, actually. He left for a construction site meeting around 7 a.m. He's overseeing a major project downtown, the new office complex on State Street. The budget is around $4.2 million, so he's been working incredibly long hours." My heart sank. She was so smooth, so convincing. "That's a lie," I said firmly. "Benjamin hasn't been here in 2 weeks. His car's in the driveway, but the house has been empty. There's moldy coffee in the kitchen, spoiled food in the refrigerator. I've been letting the housekeeping slide," Natalie admitted with an embarrassed laugh. "Work has been so hectic for both of us. The coffee cup was mine from last week. I'm terrible about cleaning up, and I haven't had time to grocery shop properly." Officer Santos turned to her partner. "Officer Chen, would you check the kitchen and the vehicle in the driveway?" As Officer Chen headed toward the kitchen, Officer Santos looked at me with sympathy, the kind of sympathy you give someone you think is confused. "Mrs. Fisher, these concerns about your son are understandable, but breaking into someone's home, I didn't break in, and there's a bloody suit upstairs in the closet. There's a journal under the bed with evidence that Natalie stalked my son, planned their entire relationship, and is after his money." "Officers, I'm so sorry about this," Natalie said, her voice breaking slightly. "Margaret has been having trouble accepting that Benjamin is married now. She's called him 47 times in the past 2 weeks. I have his phone records if you need to see them." 47 times? That many? You said Benjamin left his phone?" Officer Santos asked. "No, she said she has his phone records," I protested. "How would she have those unless she has his phone?" Natalie's eyes flickered. "We share a phone plan. I can access the records through our account." Officer Chen returned from the kitchen. "There's a dirty coffee mug with mold, and the refrigerator has some expired items. Could be a week or 2 old, hard to say definitively." "See?" I said desperately. "Or could be from someone who's been too busy to clean," Officer Chen added. "It's not unusual." Officer Santos looked at me carefully. "Mrs. Fisher, you mentioned a bloody suit and a journal. Would you show us?" "Yes, upstairs, in the master bedroom." I led the way, my heart pounding. Natalie followed, her high heels clicking on the hardwood stairs. Floors Benjamin had refinished himself, spending $8,000 and countless hours to restore them to their original glory. Everything in this house was his dream, his work. I pushed open the bedroom door and went straight to the closet. "Right here." the wedding suit, but the closet rod held only Natalie's clothes now. Row after row of expensive dresses, designer labels, price tags that would have cost thousands of dollars. No men's clothing at all. Where is it? I spun around. It was right here. Margaret, Benjamin moved all his clothes to the spare bedroom closet last week, Natalie said patiently. He needed more space for his work clothes. I told you about that when we had lunch on Tuesday? We hadn't had lunch on Tuesday. We'd never had lunch, just the two of us. That's not true. The spare bedroom? Officer Santos prompted. Natalie led us down the hall. Sure enough, the spare bedroom closet contained men's clothing. Suits, shirts, ties. I frantically pushed through them, searching for the wedding suit. It wasn't there. And the journal? Officer Chen asked. I dropped to my knees beside the bed and lifted the bed skirt. Empty. Nothing but dust bunnies and an old shoebox. No, I whispered. No, it was here. Dozens of newspaper clippings, photographs, Natalie's handwriting. Margaret, Natalie said gently, crouching beside me. There's no journal. There never was. You're confused. I looked up at the officers, seeing the doubt in their eyes. They thought I was crazy, a hysterical old woman invading her son's home. Officers, please, I begged, still on my knees beside that empty space under the bed. I know what I saw. The journal detailed everything. How she targeted my son, manipulated him, planned their entire relationship to access his money. She wrote about his $850,000 life insurance policy. His property's worth over $1 million. Margaret knows a lot about Benjamin's finances, Natalie interrupted, her voice laced with concern. She's always been very involved in his financial decisions, sometimes too involved. Benjamin and I have discussed setting boundaries. Officer Santos helped me to my feet, her grip gentle but firm. Mrs. Fisher, I understand you're worried about your son, but we have no evidence of any crime here. No journal, no bloody suit, and Mrs. Fisher says her husband was here this morning. Can you prove that? I asked desperately. Check his office downtown. Call his work. Someone must have seen him. Or not seen him. Officer Chen pulled out his radio. I can make a call to his workplace, verify his whereabouts. Hope flickered in my chest. That's really not necessary, Natalie said quickly, too quickly. But if it will put Margaret's mind at ease, Benjamin is at the Riverside construction site today. The foreman's name is Marcus Webb. His number is in my phone. She pulled out her iPhone and showed Officer Chen a contact. He stepped into the hallway to make the call. Officer Santos guided me toward the bedroom door. Mrs. Fisher, while we wait for confirmation, I need to ask, have you been under any unusual stress lately? Any changes in medication? I'm not crazy, I said firmly. I know what I saw, and I know my son. Benjamin would never ignore my calls for 2 weeks. Never. People change when they get married, Natalie said softly. Benjamin is building his own life now. Our life. It's natural for him to create some distance from his mother. The words stung because they held a grain of truth. Benjamin had seemed more distant in recent months. But this wasn't natural distance. This was something wrong. Officer Chen returned, his expression unreadable. I spoke with Marcus Webb, the foreman at Riverside Construction. He confirmed that Benjamin Fisher was on site this morning for about an hour, reviewing the foundation work. My world tilted. That's impossible. Marcus has worked with Benjamin for 6 years, Natalie added. They're friends. He wouldn't lie. Unless you paid him to, I thought. Or threatened him. Or, Mrs. Fisher, Officer Santos said gently, I think you should go home. Get some rest. Maybe talk to your doctor about the anxiety you've been feeling. I'm not anxious. I'm terrified. My son is in danger. Margaret, please, Natalie said, her eyes welling with theatrical tears. I love Benjamin. I would never hurt him. You're breaking my heart with these accusations. The officers exchanged glances, the kind that said they'd seen this before. Overbearing mother, independent son, conflict with the new wife. I won't press charges for the breaking and entering, Natalie continued, wiping her eyes. I understand this comes from a place of love, even if it's misguided. But Margaret, you can't come here unannounced anymore. You can't have that key. My son gave me that key, and now I'm asking for it back, Natalie said firmly, holding out her perfectly manicured hand. For everyone's peace of mind. Officer Santos nodded. Mrs. Fisher, I think that's reasonable under the circumstances. My hand trembled as I removed the key from my keychain. That piece of metal represented my connection to Benjamin, my ability to check on him, to help if he needed me. Surrendering it felt like cutting a lifeline. "This isn't over," I whispered to Natalie as I dropped the key into her palm. "I know you're lying. I know my son is in danger, and I will prove it." Natalie's face transformed for just a fraction of a second, a flash of cold calculation replacing the tears before her mask of concern returned. "Officers, I hope this doesn't happen again. Next time I may have to file for a restraining order." Those words felt like a physical blow. A restraining order would legally prevent me from seeing my son, from helping him. Officer Chen escorted me downstairs into my car. "Mrs. Fisher, I hope you understand we have to take these situations seriously, for everyone's safety." "My son's safety?" I asked bitterly. "Go home. Rest. If you have any actual evidence of wrongdoing, you can file a formal report. But right now, all we have is a disagreement between family members." I sat in my car, watching the officers drive away. Through the front window, I could see Natalie on her phone, pacing, planning her next move, no doubt. But she'd made a mistake. A critical mistake. I'd taken photographs. While she was downstairs talking, while the officers were checking the kitchen, I'd used my phone's camera and photographed every page of that journal I could before she hid it. The images were grainy, taken in haste, but they were there on my phone. Evidence. I drove to the Albany Police Department headquarters, my hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The photographs on my phone felt like they were burning a hole through my purse. Proof. Finally. Undeniable proof of Natalie's deception. The station smelled of coffee and disinfectant. A weary desk sergeant looked up as I approached, his name tag reading Sergeant Williams. "I need to report a missing person and a possible kidnapping," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "My son, Benjamin Fisher." Sergeant Williams pulled out a form. "How long has he been missing?" 2 weeks, since he returned from his honeymoon." His pen paused. "Has anyone filed a missing persons report?" "No, because his wife claims he's not missing. But I have evidence that she's lying, that she's been planning something terrible." I pulled out my phone and showed him the photographs of Natalie's journal. The sergeant squinted at the screen, scrolling through the images. His expression grew more serious with each page. "These entries are concerning," he admitted. "But ma'am, the quality is poor. Can you provide the original journal?" She hid it before the police arrived at the house. Officers Santos and Chen responded to my 911 call, but by the time they searched, she'd removed all the evidence. Sergeant Williams leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Fisher, without the physical evidence, these photographs don't give us much to work with. Anyone could claim these are fabricated." "I'm not fabricating anything." My voice rose, drawing looks from other officers. I forced myself to calm down. "My son has $850,000 in life insurance with his wife as the sole beneficiary. He owns property worth over $1.2 million, and his new wife has been systematically stalking him, planning their relationship, documenting everything about his finances. Those aren't the actions of someone in love. They're also not proof of a crime," the sergeant said gently. "People research their partners before marriage. It's not illegal, even if it's unsettling." "What about the bloody wedding suit? Did you photograph that?" My heart sank. "No. I saw it hanging in the closet, but before I could document it, I found the journal and, Mrs. Fisher, I understand your concern. But I can't open an official investigation based on photographs that could be challenged as authentic and a suit that's disappeared. Has your son missed any work?" "His foreman said he was on site this morning," I admitted reluctantly. "But that could be a lie. Natalie could have paid him." "That's speculation." Sergeant Williams closed his notepad. "Here's what I can do. I'll document your concerns in our system. If any actual evidence of foul play emerges, we'll have this on record. But I can't justify an investigation when the alleged victim's wife says he's fine, his employer confirms he's working, and the physical evidence has disappeared." I wanted to scream, to flip his desk, to make someone, anyone, take this seriously. Instead, I forced myself to think like the ER nurse I'd been for 3 decades. When doctors wouldn't listen, you documented everything. You built an undeniable case. "Thank you for your time, Sergeant Williams," I said quietly. Back in my car, I sat in the parking lot and created a plan. If the police wouldn't investigate, I would. I had $180,000 in retirement savings. If I needed to spend every penny to find my son, I would. First stop, Marcus Webb, the construction foreman. The riverside construction site was a maze of steel beams and concrete. Workers in hard hats moved with purpose, their voices lost in the roar of heavy machinery. I found Marcus Webb in a trailer office reviewing blueprints. Mr. Webb? I knocked on the open door. I'm Margaret Fisher, Benjamin's mother. Marcus was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with kind eyes. Mrs. Fisher, Benjamin talks about you all the time. Is everything okay? That's what I came to ask you. Officer Chen called you earlier today asking about Benjamin. Right, yeah. The police wanted to confirm he'd been on site. He was here this morning from about 7:30 to 8:30, checking the foundation work. I studied Marcus's face carefully. He seemed genuine, but Natalie was a master manipulator. Marcus, this is going to sound strange, but are you absolutely certain it was Benjamin? Today, October 26th, his brow furrowed. Of course I'm certain. We discussed the concrete pour scheduled for next week. He seemed a bit distracted, maybe tired, but he was definitely here. Why? Did he say anything unusual? Mention any problems at home? No, nothing like that. Marcus's concern deepened. Mrs. Fisher, what's going on? Is Benjamin in some kind of trouble? I don't know, I admitted. But something isn't right. When you saw him this morning, how did he seem? Did he act normally? Marcus thought carefully. Now that you mention it, he was wearing sunglasses even though it wasn't particularly bright out, and he kept his distance. Usually Benjamin will climb down into the foundation trench with the crew, but today he stayed up top. Said he had another meeting to get to. Sunglasses. Distance. Quick departure. What was he wearing? Jeans and a black jacket, I think. His usual work site clothes. Did you see his car? No, actually. He must have parked on the street instead of in our lot. I remember thinking that was odd. My pulse quickened. Nothing about this added up. Marcus, I need to be completely honest with you, I said, closing the trailer door for privacy. I don't believe that was Benjamin you saw this morning. His eyes widened. Mrs. Fisher, I've worked with your son for 6 years. I think I'd recognize... Please, just hear me out. I showed him my phone, pulling up a recent photo of Benjamin from his wedding day. You said he wore sunglasses and kept his distance. You didn't see his car. Did you hear his voice clearly? Marcus hesitated. He called out to me from the upper level. The machinery was running, so it was hard to hear perfectly, but it sounded like him. Could it have been someone pretending to be him? Someone who knew enough about the project to fake a brief conversation? That's crazy, Marcus said, but doubt crept into his voice. Who would do that? And why? I took a deep breath. This was the moment I either convinced him or he'd dismiss me as a paranoid mother. Marcus, my son hasn't returned my calls in 2 weeks. When I went to his house today, I found evidence that his wife has been stalking him, planning their relationship to gain access to his money. There was a bloody suit hidden in his closet. The police came but couldn't find it. She'd hidden everything by then. Jesus, Marcus whispered. That's insane. But I saw him. This morning. Did you? Or did you see someone wearing Benjamin's clothes, standing at a distance, wearing sunglasses, speaking just loud enough to be heard over machinery? Marcus sank into his chair, his face pale. If what you're saying is true. But who? I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. I pulled out my wallet and extracted $200 bills, money I'd withdrawn for groceries. Marcus, I need to hire someone to review the security footage from this morning. Does this site have cameras? Yes, at the entrance and near the equipment storage. He pushed my money away. Keep your cash, Mrs. Fisher. If there's even a chance Benjamin is in danger, I'll pull that footage myself right now. We spent the next 20 minutes reviewing the security recordings on Marcus's computer. At 7:28 a.m., a figure in jeans, a black jacket, and sunglasses entered the construction site. The person moved with confidence, waving to workers, but never came close enough to the cameras for a clear facial shot. That's not Benjamin's walk, I said immediately. Benjamin has a slight limp from a high school football injury. This person walks normally. Marcus froze the footage, zooming in on the figure. You're right. Benjamin always favors his left leg a bit. I never consciously noticed, but now that you mention it, we watched as the person spoke to Marcus from a distance, gestured toward the foundation, then left. The entire visit lasted less than 10 minutes. Someone impersonated my son, Marcus said, his voice hollow. Someone who knew enough about the project to fake a brief site visit. Someone who needed witnesses to believe Benjamin was alive and well this morning. Marcus grabbed his phone. I'm calling the police right now. Wait. I put my hand on his arm. Natalie has already painted me as a hysterical mother. If we go to the police now with just this footage, she'll claim it's Benjamin, and we're mistaken about his walk. We need more evidence. We need to find my son. What can I do? Does Benjamin have an office here? Files? A computer? Yes, but it's locked. I don't have access. I'm his mother, and he's missing. I think that gives us the right. Marcus studied me for a long moment, then pulled out his keys. I could lose my job for this. Thank you, I whispered. Benjamin's site office was a small room filled with architectural drawings, photos of completed projects, and a desktop computer. Marcus stood guard while I searched through files, looking for anything unusual. In the bottom drawer of Benjamin's desk, I found a folder labeled Insurance. Inside were documents for the life insurance policy Natalie had mentioned in her journal. $850,000 with Natalie Marie Fisher listed as the sole beneficiary. The policy had been updated just 3 weeks ago, increasing from $500,000. My hands shook as I photographed every page. Behind the insurance documents, I found something even more disturbing, a photocopy of Benjamin's will, also recently updated. Everything left to Natalie, and paper-clipped to it was a note in handwriting I didn't recognize. Signature verified. Transfer documents ready upon confirmation of death. Transfer documents. They were planning to steal everything Benjamin had worked for. Marcus, do you know anyone who could help me track down my son? A private investigator? Someone with resources the police won't use? My brother-in-law is a retired FBI agent. He does private investigation work now. His name is Thomas Reed, and he owes me a favor. A big one. Marcus was already dialing. Tom, it's Marcus. I need your help. It's urgent. Within an hour, I was sitting in a coffee shop with Thomas Reed, a silver-haired man in his 60s with sharp, intelligent eyes. I showed him everything: the photographs of Natalie's journal, the security footage of the impersonator, the insurance documents, the will. Thomas studied each piece of evidence carefully, making notes on a legal pad. Mrs. Fisher, you've stumbled onto something much bigger than you realize. This level of planning, the identity theft, the financial manipulation, this isn't amateur hour. Your daughter-in-law is either extremely sophisticated or she's working with professionals. Can you find my son? I can try, but my services don't come cheap. My usual rate is $250 per hour, plus expenses. I thought of my retirement savings. The $180,000 I'd carefully accumulated over 30 years of double shifts and sacrifice. Money I'd planned to leave to Benjamin. I'll pay whatever it takes, I said firmly. Thomas nodded. Then we start now. First, I need to access Benjamin's financial records. If Natalie is after his money, there will be a paper trail. Thomas Reed worked faster than I dared hope. Within 48 hours, he'd compiled a dossier that made my blood run cold. I sat in his modest office in downtown Albany, surrounded by computer screens and filing cabinets, as he walked me through his findings. Margaret, your instincts were correct. Natalie isn't who she claims to be. Thomas pulled up a driver's license photo on his computer. This is Natalie Marie Westbrook, age 34. But 5 years ago, she was known as Nicole Martinez. Before that, Naomi Weston. She's changed her identity at least 3 times that I can trace. Oh my God, I whispered. It gets worse. In 2019, Nicole Martinez married a wealthy real estate developer named Richard Chen in Sacramento. 8 months later, Richard disappeared during a supposed hiking trip in Yosemite. His body was never found. Nicole inherited his entire estate, worth approximately $2.3 million after life insurance. My stomach churned. She killed him? There was never enough evidence to prosecute. The case was ruled an accidental death. Nicole moved away, changed her name to Natalie Westbrook, and 2 years later married a venture capitalist named David Morrison in Seattle. David died in a car accident 6 months into the marriage. Brakes failed. Investigation found signs of tampering, but again, nothing could be proven. Natalie inherited $1.8 million. She's done this before, I said, my voice hollow. Twice before. And now she's doing it to my son. Thomas nodded grimly. I've contacted investigators who worked on both previous cases. They suspected Natalie but couldn't build a case. She's extraordinarily careful. She establishes alibi, makes the deaths look accidental, and disappears before anyone can connect the dots. But you've connected them. We can go to the police? With what? Circumstantial evidence from old cases in different states? Margaret, I'm good at what I do, But I'm not law enforcement anymore. This information helps us understand what we're dealing with, but it won't convince a judge to issue search warrants or arrest warrants. I wanted to scream. Then what do? We find Benjamin before Natalie can complete whatever she's planning. I've been tracking financial activity on his accounts. Thomas pulled up bank statements on another screen. 3 days after the wedding, Natalie added herself as a co-owner to Benjamin's checking and savings accounts. Since then, she's been systematically draining them. Small amounts at first, $500 here, $1,000 there. But in the past week, larger transfers. $25,000 to an offshore account. $50,000 to a shell corporation. She's moved over $300,000 so far. The number hit me like a physical blow. $300,000 of Benjamin's hard-earned money. But the largest assets are still untouched, Thomas continued. The house, his investment portfolio, his retirement accounts, those can't be accessed easily while he's alive. But with a death certificate and that updated will, she'd inherit everything, I finished. Over $1 million, closer to $1. $8 million when you include the life insurance. And Margaret, there's something else you need to know. I checked with the coroner's office. Natalie has been making inquiries about death certificates, specifically how quickly they can be issued when a body isn't recovered. She asked about presumed death declarations. My heart stopped. She's planning to kill him and claim his body was lost, like Richard Chen in Yosemite. Or she's already killed him and is setting up the legal framework to declare him dead. Thomas's voice was gentle but firm. Margaret, we need to consider the possibility that Benjamin is already gone. No. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. No. I would know. I would feel it. He's alive. A mother knows. Thomas studied me for a moment, then nodded. Okay. Then we work on that assumption. If he's alive, where would Natalie keep him? She doesn't have family here. Benjamin said she grew up in foster care, no close relatives. That was another lie. Natalie Westbrook's background is fabricated, but that actually helps us. She has to be keeping him somewhere local. She can't travel far while maintaining the illusion that he's working and going about his normal life. The impersonator on the construction site, I said suddenly. Someone who knew enough about Benjamin's work to fake a brief appearance. Someone close to Natalie. I've been thinking about that too. Thomas pulled up another file. Natalie's been paying a man named Derek Russo $3,000 a month for the past 6 months. The payments are labeled as consulting fees, but Derek Russo has no legitimate business. He does, however, have a criminal record, fraud, identity theft, and one charge of kidnapping that was dropped due to lack of evidence. That's him. That's who impersonated Benjamin. Almost certainly. And if we find Derek Russo, we might find your son. Thomas worked through the night, his fingers flying over the keyboard. I dozed in the chair across from his desk, jolting awake every time he spoke. Got something, Thomas said around 3 a.m. Derek Russo has been using a credit card registered to one of Natalie's shell companies. Last week, he made several purchases at a Home Depot in Schenectady. Heavy-duty chains, padlocks, soundproofing material. Ice ran through my veins. Where is he now? The GPS on his phone, yes, I can access that, shows he's been spending time at a location outside the city, a property in rural Rensselaer County. Thomas pulled up a satellite image. It's a cabin, isolated, no near neighbors. And here's the interesting part. The property is owned by a holding company that Natalie controls. That's where Benjamin is, I said with certainty. We need to go now. We need to call the police and tell them what? That we hacked into someone's credit card records and phone GPS? Margaret, I obtained this information through methods that aren't exactly legal. If we go to the police now, any evidence we find could be thrown out. Natalie could walk free. I don't care about legal procedure. My son could be dying. Thomas grabbed my shoulders firmly. Listen to me. If we do this wrong, Natalie wins. She gets away with murder again. We do this smart. We go to that cabin. We confirm Benjamin is there, we document everything, and then we call the police. We need undeniable, legally obtained evidence. I forced myself to breathe, to think clearly. Thomas was right. Rushing in blindly could ruin everything. Okay, I said. But we go now, tonight, before she moves him, or... I couldn't finish the sentence. We go now, Thomas agreed. But Margaret, you need to prepare yourself. If what we find... I know, I whispered. But I have to try. I have to save my son. The cabin sat in darkness, surrounded by dense woods that seemed to swallow the weak beam of Thomas's flashlight. We'd parked his car half a mile away and approached on foot, our breath forming clouds in the cold October night. It was nearly 4 a.m. "Stay behind me," Thomas whispered. He'd brought a gun, which both comforted and terrified me. "If things go wrong, you run back to the car and call 911. Promise me, Margaret." "I promise," I lied. There was no force on earth that would make me abandon my son. The cabin was old but well maintained. A single light burned in an upstairs window. Thomas circled the building, checking for security cameras or alarms. I followed, my heart hammering so hard I was sure someone would hear it. "Rear door," Thomas mouthed, pointing. Easier to breach than the front. He pulled out a lock-picking set, one of many tools from his FBI days. Within minutes, the door swung open silently. The smell hit me immediately. Sweat, fear, human waste. Someone had been imprisoned here. The main floor was empty. A kitchen, living room, both sparsely furnished. Thomas pointed upward. The light was coming from the second floor. We climbed the stairs, each creak of wood sounding like a gunshot in the silence. At the top, a narrow hallway stretched before us. 2 doors, both closed. Light seeped from beneath the one on the right. Thomas tried the handle. Locked, with a heavy deadbolt. He gestured for me to step back, then kicked the door hard. It splintered, but held. A second kick and it flew open. The scene inside will haunt me forever. Benjamin sat chained to a radiator, his wedding suit torn and filthy, dried blood on his face from a gash above his eye. He was gaunt, his face bruised and hollow, but he was alive. He looked up at us, and for a moment didn't seem to recognize me. Then tears streamed down his cheeks. "Mom?" His voice was a raspy whisper. "Mom, you're really here?" I rushed forward, dropping to my knees beside him. "Baby, I'm here. We're going to get you out." Thomas was already working on the chains with bolt cutters he'd brought. "Benjamin, how long have you been here?" Since we got back from the honeymoon. Natalie drugged me at the airport. When I woke up, I was here. Derek, a man I'd never seen. He's been guarding me." "Where is he now?" Thomas asked urgently, the chains snapping free. "He left yesterday afternoon. Said something about needing to make a final appearance." Benjamin tried to stand, but his legs buckled. I caught him, feeling how much weight he'd lost. "Mom, she's going to kill me. She told me everything. The other men, the insurance money. She's just waiting for the right moment. We know, sweetheart. We know everything. But you're safe now." A sound from downstairs froze us all. The front door opening. Footsteps. "Hello?" Natalie's voice drifted up the stairs, sickeningly sweet. "Derek, are you here? I thought I saw a light." Thomas pressed a finger to his lips and pulled out his gun. He mouthed, "Get him to the window." While Thomas positioned himself by the door, I helped Benjamin stumble toward the window. It overlooked the roof of a small porch. If we could get Benjamin out there, lower him down. "Derek," Natalie's voice was closer now, on the stairs. "I brought breakfast. We need to discuss timing." "I think another week, then we stage the hiking accident." She appeared in the doorway and froze. Her eyes took in the scene. The broken chains. Benjamin at the window. Thomas with his gun trained on her. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Natalie's face transformed. The mask of the sweet wife dropped away, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "Thomas Reed," she said, reading his stance, the professional way he held the weapon. "Ex-FBI, I'm guessing? Private investigator now?" "Margaret, you've been busy." "It's over, Natalie," Thomas said calmly. "Put your hands where I can see them." "Is it over?" Natalie smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen. "I don't think so. See, you broke into my property. You're here illegally. Any evidence you've gathered is inadmissible. And Benjamin," she looked at my son with mock sympathy. "He's obviously confused. The stress of the new marriage, the pressure of work. He's having some kind of breakdown." "I have your journal," I said. "Photographs of every page, documentation of your previous marriages, the deaths of Richard Chen and David Morrison. The police in 3 states are being contacted as we speak. That was a bluff. We hadn't contacted anyone yet." But Natalie's eyes flickered. "You have nothing," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I have enough," Thomas said. "Now hands up. We're all going to wait here calmly until the police arrive." Natalie laughed, and the sound raised the hair on my neck. "You really think I'd come alone?" She raised her voice. "Derek, now!" Derek Russo burst through the doorway behind her, and he had a gun too. Everything happened at once. Thomas shoved me behind him. Derek fired, the sound deafening in the small room. Thomas returned fire. I screamed and grabbed Benjamin, pulling him down. Glass shattered as Thomas's shot went wide. Derek dropped, clutching his shoulder. His gun clattered across the floor. Natalie dove for it, but Thomas was faster, kicking it away. "Stay down!" Thomas shouted, but Natalie was already running. We heard her footsteps pounding down the stairs, then the front door slamming. An engine roared to life outside. Thomas hesitated for only a second, torn between pursuing Natalie and securing Derek. He chose to stay, pressing his gun to Derek's head. "Margaret, call 911 now!" 6 months later, I sat in the Albany County Courthouse, holding Benjamin's hand as the jury foreman stood to read the verdict. Benjamin had gained back the weight he'd lost. The hollow look had left his eyes, but the scars, both physical and emotional, would take years to fully heal. In the matter of the state of New York versus Natalie Marie Westbrook, also known as Nicole Martinez, also known as Naomi Weston, on the count of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty. Relief washed over me so powerfully that I nearly collapsed. Benjamin squeezed my hand, tears streaming down his face. The jury found her guilty on all counts: attempted murder, kidnapping, fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Derek Russo had already pleaded guilty to kidnapping and conspiracy charges in exchange for his testimony against Natalie. His cooperation had been crucial. He detailed how Natalie had hired him 6 months before the wedding, how they'd planned every detail of Benjamin's imprisonment and staged death. Even more damning, Derek's testimony had reopened investigations into the deaths of Richard Chen and David Morrison. Evidence that had seemed inconclusive years ago now fit a clear pattern. Prosecutors in California and Washington were building cases that could add life sentences to whatever Natalie received here in New York. After fleeing the cabin that night, Natalie had driven straight for the Canadian border. She almost made it. She was stopped just 15 miles short, thanks to an alert put out by the New York State Police. In her car, investigators found $400,000 in cash, fake IDs in 3 different names, and a detailed plan for establishing a new identity in Toronto. They also found something else: a list of potential targets, wealthy men in major cities across North America, complete with financial profiles and vulnerability assessments. Benjamin hadn't been her final intended victim. He was just one in what would have been a long series. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. As we left the courthouse, reporters swarmed us, but Thomas Reed, who'd become not just our investigator but a dear friend, helped us push through the crowd. "Margaret, Benjamin, how do you feel about the verdict?" they shouted. I paused at the top of the courthouse steps and looked back at the cameras. "I feel grateful," I said clearly. Grateful to Thomas Reed for his expertise and courage, grateful to the jury for seeing through Natalie's lies, and grateful that my son is alive and standing beside me today. What would you say to other mothers who suspect something is wrong with their children's partners? Trust your instincts, I said firmly. Trust that a mother's intuition means something. I was told I was hysterical, paranoid, that I needed therapy, but I knew something was wrong. If you know deep in your gut that someone you love is in danger, don't give up. Document everything. Find help. Don't let anyone convince you you're crazy. Benjamin stepped forward. My mother saved my life. She spent $87,000 of her retirement savings hiring Thomas, fighting for me when no one else would listen. She gave up everything to find me. His voice broke. I can never repay that. You don't need to repay it, I said, pulling him into a hug. That's what mothers do. We fight for our children, always. The settlement of Benjamin's case took several more months. He recovered all of the money Natalie had stolen, the $300,000 she'd transferred, plus $85,000 in legal fees. The house was his, free and clear. His life insurance policy was reinstated with me as the sole beneficiary, the way it should have been. Natalie was sentenced to 40 years in prison without the possibility of parole, with the charges from California and Washington likely to add consecutive life sentences. She would never see freedom again. The media dubbed her the Black Widow Bride, and her case sparked conversations about warning signs in relationships, the importance of background checks, and the need to take seriously the concerns of family members who suspect abuse or manipulation. Thomas refused to take any more of my money beyond his initial fee. "You've already paid enough, Margaret," he said. "Besides, this case has brought me more clients than I can handle. Half the families in Albany want me to investigate their kids' partners now." Today, as I write this from my home in Albany, Benjamin is rebuilding his life. He's returned to his architecture firm, though he's taken a step back to focus on healing. He comes for dinner every Sunday, the tradition we'd maintained before Natalie entered our lives. Sometimes he talks about what happened in that cabin, the fear, the hopelessness, the moment he'd almost given up. But mostly, we talk about the future, about the incredible second chance he's been given. I think about the women Natalie killed. Richard Chen and David Morrison didn't have someone to fight for them the way I fought for Benjamin. Their mothers or siblings or friends might have had suspicions, but not proof, not enough time to act. I think about how close we came to losing everything. If I'd listened to those officers who thought I was hysterical, if I'd accepted the narrative that Benjamin was just busy with his new life, if I'd doubted my instincts for even a moment, a mother's intuition saved my son's life. And now I use my voice to encourage others to trust their own instincts, to fight for the people they love, to never give up even when the world tells you you're wrong. Benjamin is alive. He's healing. And every morning when I wake up and see his car in my driveway for our coffee together, I'm reminded that persistence, love, and a mother's fierce determination can overcome even the most calculated evil. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel for more true stories of survival and justice, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. Your support means everything to me, and I hope my story helps someone out there trust their instincts when they know something is wrong. Remember, a mother's love is the strongest force in the world. Never underestimate it, never doubt it, and never ever give up on the people you love.